Hello, Keith Marchiano, Senior Executive Coach here at Pax8 Academy, and welcome to another Results Selling Framework podcast. March is designated as Women's History Month. We're going to continue the conversation today around women in business. March 8th is, in the U.S., is International Women's Day. So I thought this would be a great topic and bring in one of my colleagues to discuss, again, women in sales and business. All right. I'm super excited about this podcast. I'd like to welcome in my colleague coming to us all the way from Melbourne, Australia. Sorry, Maria. I Baltimore'd that thing for you. It's Maria Armstrong. Welcome to our Results Selling Framework podcast.
Hi, Keith. Thank you. Yes, all the way from Melbourne, Australia. We don't tend to pronounce the R in Melbourne, but lovely to meet. Lovely to see you.
Gotcha. I don't know. I'll have to practice that one to see if I can get that down.
Melbourne.
So all the way from, I'll just say from Australia. So
That's it.
I have to get my production team to cue some Men at Work or In Excess here. Let's get it going. Two of my favorite bands, by the way. That's one of my fun facts. So
we have a In Excess lane here in the city of Melbourne.
I can imagine. Definitely one of my favorite bands of all time. I saw them live over a dozen times here in the U.S. So, but I digress. We can probably talk about them all day long. Michael Hutchins, one of my favorite singers, one of my favorite frontmen. So, like I said, I could talk about them all day long. Maria, can you give give the listeners a little intro to you, a little bio, and of course, in Pax8 tradition, one fun fact.
Sure. So I'm the manager of the academy team here in the APAC region. I've been at Pax8 for just over 2.5 years, which in Pax8 world is a long time. We operate in dog years, so half a lifetime. So the Asia Pacific region, we are working in 7 countries at the moment: Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia. 7 countries, multiple languages, multiple currencies, multiple time zones. It's an amazing challenge to be part of. Not only that is the channel landscape here in the APAC region is very different depending on which country you're in, depending on which area of which country you're in. So even within Australia, which is huge, Australia, if you look at a map, Australia is the same size landmass as America. It's North America, but we only have 28 million people, roughly.
Wow.
So, and our cities have spread very far between, and there's pretty much nothing, very little to nothing in between them. So we tend to have very vast differences in how things operate and how the approach to business is from one side of Australia to the other. So even if we look just within Australia or within New Zealand and Australia, it's very different. And then we go into Asia and it's different again. So it's a wonderful challenge to be part of Manager Academy, because in Academy, we're obviously educating the partners. So we have to look at that. So my background, and I've worked in the APAC region for a long time. My background has been in sales in the IT space. My early days were working for vendors, the big vendors at the enterprise end of town. And about 10 years ago, I landed in the MSP side, in the MSP world, and the MSP end of the channel. And I love it, and I wouldn't go back. I love working with the MSPs. Within the MSPs, I worked at an MSP, and being at the MSP end of town is just so vibrant. This is where I want to stay.
I'm with you. I'm not going back either.
Fun fact about me. There's so many fun and interesting facts. I live in Melbourne, Australia, as I mentioned, but I wasn't born here. I was actually born in England, and I did a number of my years of schooling in America. So I have lived, worked, or schooled in all 3 regions that Pax8 operates in. So
That's true.
global citizen.
There you go. It's awesome. That's why it makes up who you are in different areas. That's incredible. You never think about it. Like, yeah, definitely different cultures, but like even U.S., like somebody that's in California versus Philly, yeah, it's some little culture differences, but from a selling standpoint, totally different. But from what you described, going into the Asian market as well as being down into the South Pacific area, it's boy, holy smokes, like different ways of IT services that are being put out there, as well as like you said, language, cultural differences as well. Yeah,
Mm,
that's got to
yeah,
be fun.
it is.
So, what made you get into sales, and what do you love about it?
I fell into it accidentally. Uh,
I haven't met anybody. The way when I ask that question, everybody kind of trips in it. We didn't go to school for this stuff, I tell
no,
you.
no, there isn't a go to university and to be a salesperson.
Right.
There isn't a course for that. I was hired at Veritas Software. They said, we think that we're leaving some money on the table when it comes to some of our customers. There's some additional bits and pieces we could be selling them. Can you just look through our records? Now, back then, their records was a filing cabinet in the corner, and I had to go through the filing cabinet of paper in the corner and digitize it so that I could figure out what there was, which I did. And that their plan was for me to go through the records, digitize it, and give it to the sales team. But while I was doing it, I started making calls. And that's how I ended up selling.
Okay.
And we found, I found $1 million in the first quarter.
Wow.
And by the time by the time I left there, nearly 5 years later, I had a team of 9 people with a budget of $32 million US. So yeah, we grew the team of lost money, and had a whole system, proper digital system to manage it.
That's awesome. So the second part of that question was, what do you love about sales? What kind of really what's the passion around that?
I actually like helping people. So it's not the selling side. I mean, you know, I like I like I like selling something. I like having a conversation with somebody. But I love being able to listen to the problem that somebody is having and saying, I have an answer for that. I can solve your problem. That's what I love doing. So it's
Best
basically
part.
being able to help people.
Best part. Yeah. Let's dive into it. It's like I said in my intro, Women's History Month. Give me a scenario during your sales career that things went wrong and what you learned from it.
There's always things that have gone wrong in sales. There's always things that go right. I mean, things that go wrong, we've all put too many eggs in one basket, I guess, when it comes to sales. I'm a big believer of not doing that. I think because I was tasked with finding the little bits of deals that were left on the table. And I learnt that from small wins, you could build up a big line of business. I have learnt that it doesn't necessarily mean you should be chasing those big dollars. You're better off going after a whole lot of small deals. But occasionally I've thought, that nice big shiny deal would be good.
Yeah.
and it's not come through at the end of a quarter.
I think we all do that. It's just like kind of, try to solve the problem, dig a little deeper, and then, try to figure out how we can solve it, right?
Yeah.
I always remember one lesson I learned early on in my sales career was I didn't know the answer. And I kind of tried to get an answer out. I thought I had to give the person an answer, and I lost the opportunity. And when I came back to it, he's like, I totally lost confidence in you. Didn't seem like you were being forthright or straight with me. And I kind of came clean and said, well, I'm new in sales. I really wanted to give you an answer. I probably should have just told you I didn't know and came back and gave you the answer, but I screwed up. Sorry about that. And that was probably a lesson that I learned from a sales standpoint. And actually, that person came back to me like 5 years later and bought from me then because of that conversation. But it was really from an eye-opening standpoint. It's like, don't BS people. They pick up on it. It was probably one of the biggest things I learned early in my career from a sales standpoint.
Yeah, I think that being able to say, do you know what? I actually have no idea. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to find out for you. That one is learning that one early on and being humble enough to say it. And humble and sales don't tend to go hand in hand.
It's true.
So that takes a big leap as a salesperson to be humble enough to be able to say, I don't know it. And young salespeople, trying to coach them through learning that one is a difficult one. And we all had to go through learning that one ourselves.
So I had Jennifer Evans on last week, and I'm going to ask you a question I asked her. Sales has historically been a male-dominated role. I don't feel gender plays a factor if a salesperson's good or not, right? You're either a good salesperson or you're a bad salesperson. I've seen good and bad in both genders. So tell me your experiences as a woman, good and bad, kind of from a standpoint, your experiences as a woman in sales, good and bad throughout your career. If that makes sense.
The positives are that I'm not seen as a threat. So clients will often just open up to me. There are times when they will say things to me that I think is a lot more information than they would to a man. And I've actually had my male colleagues say they would never open up that way to me. They would never reveal that much information about their business to me. And it's because I'm not seen as a threat. The flip side of that is I'm not seen as important or as powerful. As powerful, I think, is probably the word. With power comes threatening. I'm not seen as powerful as my male colleagues. So it really depends on the room I'm walking into. I mean, do they want someone who's seen as powerful? If that's the case, then I'm the wrong person. So it really depends on the space. When I was working in selling into government and enterprise, being a woman was really difficult because they want power. That's what they were looking for. On the one hand, though, there was times that it worked quite well for me. You will hear from every woman that you've ever heard of in our industry about the negatives of being a woman in our industry and our business. I've been told that I don't belong in a room because I'm a woman. I was told that I couldn't be a salesperson because I'm a woman. It still happens. Not as much recently, but there are negatives. So, but I think from the positive is that we're not seen as a threat. So we have that opportunity to sometimes get in a little bit under their defenses.
Yeah, I agree with that part. Is it, from a standpoint of kind of the bias that you brought up, is that you seeing that less and less because of, kind of the generational shift away from baby boomers run to more into Gen X and millennials running businesses now? Or is it just more of people are more open and accepting? What do you think is, from a standpoint you're seeing this shift? What's the reasoning?
Yeah, in some cases I see it generationally shifting. In other cases, I think it's just people are still thinking it, they're just not saying it out loud, which is actually a little bit harder to handle. In some cases, I'd rather they say it out loud because then I know what's going on. If somebody's saying to my face, "You don't belong at this table," then I know they've laid their cards out on that table, and I can deal with it. If they're thinking it, it's a lot harder to combat. So, and this is an experience that a lot of women I'm talking to have faced as well. So it's sort of a little bit of both. In some cases it is lessened, but there's the younger generations have learnt from the older ones who are still in the office, still in the workplace. It's going to take a lot longer to filter out.
Yeah, good point. And also, yeah, that's boy, what a bigger challenge. Like you said, if they, man, you don't belong in here, they keeping that inward, right? You don't like how are you going to root that out? And most potentially is like you're not going to win the business, right? They're going to go with a male salesperson because they have that bias in their head or in their heart, and they're not expressing it to you. So, like at least like I was telling Jennifer last week was I had a situation where I worked with other women and they would get us in the door. And then when it came to like kind of that same conversation, they at least get the sales manager in to win the business. The business could still be won. That salesperson, she could still get paid. Like now it's like, boy, that's a hard objection and obstacle to overcome if you don't know it's there. How would you, like, is there any way to root that out, or any, if you're talking, if salespeople are listening here, which they probably are, is like, how do you root that out to make sure, or maybe proactively overcome that from happening? What are some things you can do? Is there any steps that you took to kind of bring in male counterparts without even being asked? Or
I mean, from my perspective now, it's more a case of you have to just read between the lines. You're listening for what they're not saying. You're watching their body language. It's feeling for, well, they clearly haven't taken in what I've just said to them. They're, when we're trying to have this conversation, they're only taking in portions of it because they're not taking me seriously as an individual. There'll be times when I'm in a meeting with a male colleague. I'll sometimes take a male colleague into a second meeting, just to see, I've got an intuition that maybe this is what is going on, and then I'll watch them talk to my male colleague, and I'll ask a question, and they'll answer my male colleague, and I'll think, okay, that's what's going on. Right. So it's quite interesting to test. It's frustrating, but it's really just, that's the only way you can do it, because you can't call somebody out. I don't know that they even know necessarily. I don't know that it's an active, I don't think Maria belongs at this table. It's potentially just, they've grown up in the industry and it was the norm 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and it's an internal bias, and they don't even know. And so often with biases, we don't know that we have these biases. It's something that's happened so long ago. And when people call us out on our biases, we often, well, hang on a minute, that's not right. And until we acknowledge those biases ourselves and realize that. But I couldn't do that to a client because that's definitely not going to win me the business.
But that's a great approach from a standpoint. I like what you did there, and what you said is like, you can kind of root some of that stuff out. Some great tips for sure. And yeah, you're right. It's like unfortunate that that bias still exists, but yeah, like you said, it's been ingrained through past experiences and kind of passed on. And like you said, it gets less and less, but it's still there.
And I think we can start to get through to people. I will tell stories of my daughter. I have two daughters. I have a 20-year-old daughter who's started in the workplace about a year ago. She started a job. And I'll tell stories about her in the workplace and working. And often I'll connect with clients and prospects who have 20, 30-year-old daughters, and they'll say, oh, my daughter had a really bad experience in the workplace with men who were treating her badly. And I'm like, oh, you should ask her how she feels. And then we're slowly educating people to understand. So it's going to take time, but I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah, well said. Very well said. So speaking of that, as a wife and a mom, talk to me about your work-life balance of being a business professional and serving those roles as well.
It's a very, very fine blade. And I feel like I'm being sliced into all the time. So my eldest is 20. I went back to work. She was 5 months old when I went back to full-time work. And my full-time job was busy with lots of travel, international travel. I was off leaving her for weeks at a time when she was only little, tiny baby still. And it was hard. It was really difficult. And I remember feeling guilt all the time. I was guilty when I was at work because I was leaving her and my husband, and I was guilty when I was at home because I wasn't doing enough work. And then it was just overwhelming all the time. It's easier now with my children being young adults, teenagers. When they were little, even when they were 10, 12, 15, younger, I used to pre-cook meals for whenever I had to travel for work and have the freezer stocked with meals because my husband also works full time. So I didn't want him to have to do all the basketball, football, scout runs and have to on his own and have to cook meals. So I used to do all of that before I traveled for work. So traveling for work was very stressful.
I bet.
But now I don't. Now I just go, I'm leaving. You can sort yourselves out. You're all adults. You can figure yourselves out.
That's right.
Life's quite pleasant now. I think there is that guilt, no matter what. You feel that trying to find that balance. Having said that, I was talking to my girls, both the girls, my 20-year-old and my 16-year-old, recently about this, and they both appreciate having had me working and showing them that I could be me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, they probably learned a lot from you. Strong, independent woman, raising kids, still having a professional career, what that can look like. That's awesome, Maria.
Yeah, and I still found time to be a scout leader and volunteer to do the things to help out as well, and support the footy club and be a basketball coach and do all the things that I needed to help them. yes, it's been a busy 20 years, but I think that's what you do if you want to be involved. And it's made me a better person. It's meant that I'm a better mother because I could be me at work, and then I can come home and be a better parent to them. That's what I needed. I needed the time to use my brain for me.
Yeah.
And I could be a better person at work because I got time with my children to volunteer and all the other things. I was very lucky that I had some, while I did do travel and all the other things, I've had great employers who have flexibility around, I need to pick my kid up from school, I need to take them to the doctor, I need to do something. And my employers have all been really supportive. So that's been really fantastic.
So, Maria, I really appreciate that, and thanks for sharing your perspective. Just an amazing story. Um, when I was in sales, one of my biggest motivators, my wife, with our second born, she made the decision to stay home after he was born. Like, she wanted to raise them. She didn't want to do childcare. We had some childcare with our sister, things like that. But she was like, "I'm going to stay at home." And from an inside standpoint, a motivator for me was like, "Man, my wife made a courageous decision to put her career on hold." My motivator as a salesperson is really, I gotta feed my family, right? I gotta take care of my family so my wife could stay home. And I'm imagining for you, it was that intrinsic motivator for you was your husband and your kids and taking care of them and knowing like, hey, we keep doing this. You can have this work life balance, right? You can still have a career and still be that scout leader and that coach and that parent. It's incredible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. My husband, for a short while, he early on in my career, he actually quit his job and went off to university full time.
Oh,
So I was the sole provider. That was for a while. So there were we did have we did have that for a little while, for 4 years. So while he became an engineer, and then he started working. Um, but yeah, that was for me, being able to provide for the family and help us have the life we wanted was super important.
awesome. So let's pivot the conversation a little bit. Um, Sales itself, it's hard, right? Although otherwise people would be selling all day long. They wouldn't need us as coaches, right? it Sales takes skills. It's not just you can just walk into it and be able to pick it up, right? Being able to have thought provoking conversations to create interest, and the key word being create, right? It's just not finding, it's creating interest. So with salespeople having to do this, what are your ideas around how MSPs can generate some quick sales wins?
Understanding what their clients want, need, are probably the absolute, not probably, they are the absolute key to creating that quick win. There's two parts of that. It's understanding what they want and need and understanding what they don't have.
Mm.
So, how do you know what they don't have? Have you looked at what you've sold them? Do you know what your clients have? So, do an analysis. Have a look at the white space. Have a look at what you've sold your clients and what you haven't sold your clients. Look at it across all of your clients, and you can create mini campaigns.
Mm.
You can create mini talking points and mini, you could say, I can see I've got all of these clients that I haven't sold this particular product to or service to, or all of these clients that I can upgrade to this new service that I want to sell. And then you can go out and talk to them, go out and find out more information about their needs around that. It's a really quick win. Think of it as, would you like fries with that? I mean, ultimately, for those of us who used to, they don't upsell anymore, but ultimately that's what we're doing.
Yeah, good point. Like, a lot of times, like a lot of our these episodes are around finding new prospects, but for most of our partners out there, the MSPs, like the best sale, the easier sale to make is with your existing client base. I like this white space analysis. So, yeah, you can create campaigns around it. So, I like that. Touch more on that. Like, what ideas around that to, what campaigns are you looking at? What conversations should they be having? Like, let's take security as the example, because I know pretty much every listener that we have, every MSP is our security services are always evolving, always growing. So how do they do that, right? Somebody's on an agreement that doesn't have our latest security services. What are some tips around that kind of that white space analysis there?
Okay, so we've done a list of all of our clients and we've looked and we can see we've got 10 clients who we haven't sold our security service to. So what we might do is say, let's figure out what our talking points are around our security service and make sure that we've got that information there. Then we're going to make appointments with those 10 clients. So the great thing is that because you've got that list of 10 clients, you've got all of your information together. You're trying to limit the amount of times you're having to do the same amount of work. So this is when we're talking quick wins, this is what we're doing. We're having everything together. This is why the white space analysis works really well. So from a talking perspective, security is a great one. There is so many governance issues coming up. There are so many changes happening to security on a daily basis that our clients need to be aware of, that they simply don't have time or knowledge or ability to be across. They are busy running businesses. If you think about what the clients need to cover, most of them don't even know that they need to have security. A lot of them just assume that because security is kind of part of, it's like it's something to do with our IT, so of course it's all covered. They don't know that it's an optional extra. It's not optional, but we're making them pay for it as though it's optional extra. So we need to have that conversation with them. We need to make sure they know that it's not optional, but they still need to pay for it. It's absolutely critical. We need to educate the clients because they don't know what security is. They don't understand it. So it's an educational component. We need to go out and explain to them why security is important, what's involved in it, the fact that security is the moment they chose to connect to the internet, they put their business at risk. And every business is connected to the internet these days. So they've got their business in a scary place, and now they need security. And we need to talk to them about what that looks like for them.
Yep. And every business has humans. So you got internet and humans, right? Mistakes are going to happen. Some of the stuff is some of the tomfoolery out there is so creative that even the good human eye is not going to capture it, right? So yeah, those two big things. Like if you look at where partners go wrong is they talk about their security solutions. That's not the way, right? So what is the way? Like way we kind of coach around result selling framework is like, how do we help them grow their business? How do we help them gain efficiencies in their business? And then how do we help them protect their business? So what are, instead of talking about our products and the solutions, what are some ways, questions, conversations that partners should be having?
Well, I mean, if we think about those three areas, gain efficiencies. Well, from an efficiency standpoint, or from a business continuation perspective, if we're asking questions of a client around security, how long could you keep running your business if you were offline? So if you didn't have access to your data, how long could you keep running your business? Could you last for an hour? Can you last for a day? Can you last for a week? What if you never got your data back? How much is your data worth? So these are all questions that could be asked.
Yeah. Along with like, hey, what runs your business? What line of business applications do you use?
Yeah.
Have you ever had a situation where you couldn't access that application? How did that impact your company? Then you can kind of multiply it to, hey, what if you couldn't access that line of business application for 2 weeks?
Absolutely. What about your phones? What about your phone system? Are we providing VoIP phones to them? What about your phone system? Your phones are now an issue. What about your phones? So all of these things can be part of these questions that we can ask them to help guide them in understanding that security is actually woven into everything that they're thinking about. What is being taken offline and how long can their business last without it? The average business, small business, lasts between 3 and 7 days before it has to close its doors after a security incident. So that is super important for our clients to understand. The business for our clients, the business is their baby. Business owners don't start a business they don't wake up and go, I'm going to start a business because I feel like it. They have a passion, they have a dream, they want to start a business. They built this from the ground up and they don't want it to be destroyed. So we need to get to that bit for them to understand. So they're the questions we need to ask. We need to get them understanding that's why security is important, because of these things. And how do we do that? Well, so we ask them these questions that make them realize just how important. For those of you who have children or teenagers or who've worked with young people, you don't want to tell them what to do because they never want you to. You're always wrong. So you tell them what to do and you know nothing and you just get eye rolls. I have a teenager in my house. I get a lot of eye rolls. But if I ask some questions and then she goes, I have an idea. And I go, oh, that's an amazing idea. However did you come up with that idea? So that's ultimately what we're doing with our clients, with a little less dramatic acting, of course. We're asking a whole lot of questions, and they're about their security or about the value of what they're using within their business. And then they go, how much would it cost me to protect all of this? Well, funny you should ask, because I have this amazing security solution for you that is, so much less than the value of your data. That's how I would sell security. Also using some real world examples. Have a look at what's been going on in your industry. Again, your clients don't have time to Google articles that are happening in our industry, what's happening in the IT world. And all they're seeing is big business. They're seeing what's hitting mainstream media. So they're seeing the banks. They're seeing the big breaches. They're not seeing the small real estate agent. They're not seeing the local the local pizza shop or
Mm.
the small businesses that are being hit and really hurting and closing their doors. We are, because that's hitting the IT news. So find those articles, find the ones in your area, find the ones in your vertical, and share them with your clients when you're going out and talking to them. Oh, you might be interested in learning about this. This happened. This is how we would mitigate this. This is the efforts that we would put in place to help mitigate these risks for you.
Yeah, great point. It's almost like when we see something bad that happened on the news. It's like, oh, that was horrible. Like if it's in a different part of the country, somewhere else, it's like, oh, that's horrible, and then we move on, right? If it happens in our region, we're like, it's a little more affecting us, right? Oh my gosh, it's happening in our state or in our our part of the world, right? The circle got smaller. If it happens in our community, boy, now it's really touching home, right? Something real, you really start to take notice. And then if it happens to a friend or family member, super impactful. Then the circle's smaller when it happens to us, right? Same thing you're talking about is where's your prospect in regards to this circle. I had a podcast a few months ago with one of my partners, Mike from Kyber, who kind of talked about this whole circle, effectiveness conversation, and that's really where we need to have conversations as salespeople from a standpoint, or even owners if you're having these conversations, or account managers if you're having these conversations, to find out, make it more local, right? It's going to be more impactful if it's closer to home, right? Hitting closer to home than somewhere further out. Great point. Thanks for bringing that up. What about also MSPs out there? They talk about this all the time. Oh, I've got all these clients that are on legacy agreements. Like you're talking about this white space. How often should MSPs be talking to their clients about the white space in their managed services, especially as security threats, happen and new stuff comes out pretty much on a quarterly basis? It used to be like, maybe every year. Now it's like every quarter something new's out there, these new threats, and might need a new solution. Like, what's your thoughts around that, and what should MSPs be doing to kind of fill that white space?
Yeah, and they need to make sure they're not talking about product to their clients, because their clients don't care. Um, the amount of times I've seen clients' eyes glaze over when product is being mentioned. They want solutions. They want to their business problems. So with the white space analysis, the reason I really like it is because they can keep track of where they're up to with their clients. If you are talking to your clients on a regular cadence, and I'm not going to specify whether that's monthly, quarterly, 6 monthly, annually, because that's going to be based on the size of the client, the relationship, the
The
it's
maturity
a
level of that client, right? All
all
kinds
of
of
the
factors.
things as yes. So, let's say it's quarterly. Let's say that you have decided that every single client gets a quarterly visit. But if you are speaking to every single client on their regular visit, then you know where they're at, and you are obviously having the right conversations and making sure they're up to date. And you've analyzed it, and you've sold them everything that they need to be sold, and you're making sure that they're up to date with all of the latest greatest. From an agreement perspective, if you don't specify that we are going to sell you this particular product to solve this particular solution, this particular challenge, then you're
Yes.
okay, because you can say, well, there's a better product or a better, an upgrade to that product. We haven't detailed, version 1.0 of, so you can upgrade the product and you can replace the product
Hmm.
from an agreements perspective.
I like that. That's, it's a great, great analogy. Is like we get the updates all the time for our iPhones or Android devices, and we don't bat an eye. They're just, okay, sounds good to me. It's like, these security, they're constantly putting security bugs in place. That's kind of the mentality we have to have as MSPs. It's like, there's a threat out there, we got to protect them. Because going back to what you said, our clients just think we're protecting them. They don't realize that there's something new out there. That's our job to have those conversations.
I often make a point of talking to end client. I mean, we obviously work in the partner space, being PAX 8. We're working directly with NSP business owners, but I often make a point of going to various Chamber of Commerce events in my local area, and speaking to just directly to end business owners, just to get a feel for how business owners are in my area. And I'll just ask them, what do you do about security? What are you thinking of IT providers? Just a straw poll. And they all think that if they have an IT provider, their IT provider is providing full security. Have you read your contract? Of course it's full security. I'd like you to read your contract. Of course it's full security, and of course it's always updated on a regular basis.
Sure.
So, they just assume, and, because, like you said, because we get that with our phones, because we get that with everything these days, we just assume that automatic updates are just going to come. This is how life works now. This is how all of our personal systems work. We just assume that our business systems will work exactly the same way. And the moment we sign up to a provider, we assume that that's the case. If you're not explaining to your clients that you're not doing that, or if you're not building that into your contracts, maybe you should be, because they're assuming that you're doing it. So build it into your contracts and build it into your pricing.
Yeah, consistent conversations, education, right? We talk about this, like no MSP that's listening right now ever wants to hear that their client's got an incident, because the client's going to say at the end of the day, what's kind of even, during the incident or when it settles, like, what happened? I thought you were protecting us. And what are you going to do? It's like, well, you didn't agree, you didn't sign off on that, right? You didn't want to add that part. So, I say to MSPs is like, you've got to let people know, and almost kind of like you said, matter of factly, we're just adding this into your agreement. It's going to increase your cost by X. And guess what? You may outgrow some clients. You may have to shed some clients that are like, I don't want that version of your managed services. It's like, well, at the end of the day, if something happens to you, you're going to blame us. We're going to be at risk just as much as you. If you don't want it, maybe you need a new IT provider if you don't trust us enough to know that we're taking your best interest at heart here.
And unfortunately, in the security space now, in the security world, they're now saying that the terminology we use is when you have an incident, not if. When. So, without selling using fear, we need to say it's a matter of fact that when you have an incident, we will be there to support you, and we are doing everything that we can to mitigate the fallout of that incident. But when?
Yeah, well said. So great discussion. I thought, man, thanks for being on the program, and Maria, thanks for sharing your personal story. I really appreciate that. I'm sure a lot of listeners are just like, inspired by your story. So thanks for that. I guess I'll leave this for you. Any final tips or to help our MSP audience with their sales, improve their sales?
Listen to your clients. Go out there, have some conversations, just listen, be open. I said that as as a woman, I'm non-threatening because, and the partners and the clients just open up to me. Often it's just because I ask questions and I just listen and absorb. I spend a lot of time asking questions, um, and just listening. So reading between the lines, taking in a lot of information. Try it out. Sales is takes takes practice. People, it it's a skill that you need to practice. There's a lot of people who say, "Oh, I'm not a born salesperson." I don't think any of us were born salespeople. As Keith said, and I said, there's no university course. We didn't go off to university, sales 101. We we fell into sales, accidentally, in my case, and went, "What? I like this. This is fun." And then I have done so many courses myself and education, and I'm constantly reading stuff and learning new sales skills and practicing. And if I don't have a conversation with a prospect or a client for some time, I find myself a little rusty. So just practice, read up, educate yourself. And if it doesn't work the first time, have another go. It's really a conversation.
Awesome. Well said. Great way to wrap this program up. So, Maria, thanks again for being on here. Again, I appreciate, one, working and collaborating with you, and again, sharing your story and helping MSPs with this white space, especially with their existing clients.
Thanks, Kate.
All right. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Great discussion. And look, I was super excited to kind of do this segment this month, with celebrating women's history and International Women's Day, and having conversations with two very strong, independent, successful women. Um, it's easier to keep the clients that you have than go find new ones. So I really liked the conversation we had today with Maria. Kind of really focused sales from an internal standpoint with clients, and she discussed around asking good questions, being curious, and having conversations. That's it. There's no selling, just helping, right? So if you kind of put that in your mindset, it's like, I have this group of existing clients. I need to help them. That's what you're doing. And working with and collaborating with Maria has really taught me a lot on being a better sales coach. So if anything, from this past, month is a learning experience for you all, is like, man or woman, people have a lot to offer. Be open-minded and have conversations with people to kind of soak in their knowledge and experiences. If you want more ways to improve your sales, like we discussed here, or anytime we discuss here on Results Selling Framework podcast, please reach out to me or your Pax8 account manager around sales coaching. Also, please make sure to add Results Selling Framework podcast to your library. Just go to the Pax8 YouTube page and you'll see podcasts, and there you'll find Results Selling Framework. So that way you'll be able to be notified when we have a new podcast being released. Join me next month as we chat with Jonathan Cox. He's an operational solution consultant here at Pax8, and we're going to discuss automating your MSP sales. So thanks again for tuning in to Results Selling Framework, and we'll see you next time.